Hi friends, welcome to Plants and Prosecco. I'm Melissa. So today I thought we would talk about hydrangea pruning. So there are two types of hydrangeas that you might have in your yard. There are types of hydrangeas that bloom on old wood, which means that if you grew a hydrangea from seed, it would only put out stalks with leaves on it the first year. And then the second year, it would give you blooms because that's the old wood. So essentially, it's second year growth. The other kind of hydrangea are hydrangeas that bloom on new wood. And what that means is that you have to cut the previous year's growth down to encourage new growth to come up so that the hydrangeas bloom. The difference in the two types is that typically the hydrangeas that bloom on old wood bloom earlier in the season than the ones that bloom on new wood. So hydrangeas like oak leaf hydrangeas, which I have one of those in my yard as well, but that is brand new as of last year and doesn't need any pruning on it because it's very small. And then this guy behind me, which was here when we bought the house. So I cannot tell you what kind it is, but I can tell you that it is a hydrangea that blooms on old wood. Hydrangeas that bloom on new wood, I don't have any of in my yard, but for those, you would want to cut it back in late winter or early spring, probably more late winter. I would say probably like late February, early March. To about a foot above the ground. So you'll just take all of it and you'll cut it all the way back and it will flesh all the way back out, and that is how you will get your blooms. Those typically bloom in the late summer. With hydrangeas that bloom on old wood, which is what this one is, there's a very specific way you prune them, but it is very, very easy to do. So I am going to show you how you do that today. So this one we have not done any pruning on at all. This is its growth from last year that we just left over the winter. It's a pretty good winter interest, so we just leave it alone. But let me get you in here and I'll show you how you can tell how to prune these. Okay, so the key to pruning old wood hydrangeas is that you have to let them start budding a little bit. So you can see around in here that this one has started to bud. So what you do is you're literally gonna take every single stalk on this plant. It's gonna sound tedious, but it really will not take you that long. So you're literally gonna take every bud on this, or every stalk on this plant, so every one of these twigs you see coming out, and you're gonna prune that down. And the way you're gonna prune it down is, so here is a bloom head from last year. You can see here, we're gonna follow this down, and you can see that right here is its first bud. So we're gonna take this down to the first bud right here. So we're gonna take this and we're just gonna snip. So that's our first cut. Next one, you do the same thing. So you've got this, you follow it down to the first bloom head and you go like that. Now, let me find one. So here, this is one where part of the stalk is still alive and part of it is dead. So if you look at this guy has no bloom stalks on it. So I'm going to take that down to here and trim that off. But this guy is blooming. So I'm just going to trim him down to the first head. So you have, that's the first head, that. So it's same thing on all of these. So here's the bloom head on this one. You just follow it down to the first one, cut. Same thing here. You follow, this is the bloom head from last year. You follow it down, the first bud is right here. So we're gonna travel that. And so we're just gonna go through and we're gonna do this whole thing. So this one right here, down to the first bud. This guy is not blooming. This is actually a dead bloom head, probably got hit by some frost. So this is dead all the way to here. So we're gonna take that guy off. So now we only have, so like on this one, so this is the one we just cut that went to this bloom stalk, but this stick right here is a dead piece of wood. So we're gonna trim that off. And then we go up here and this one, the first bloom head is here. So we're gonna trim it down. And basically you're just gonna do that on every single one of these. And we're gonna clean this whole guy up. So I'm gonna set the camera up and I'm gonna get to work and you'll see how it looks as I go along, and then we'll show you the finished product. Hey friends, I got it all trimmed up. So I think it looks so much better. But I will say, like, this hydrangea's been here for, I don't know, maybe a decade. We've lived in this house since 2015, so 7 years. So it's at least 7 years old, and it was this size when we moved in. So I'm guessing it's pretty significantly established, which is why it's so big. So it takes up this whole space. We let it take up this whole space. This would be the time, though, that if you wanted to prune it back and have it be smaller, this would be the time. So, like, as I was going, even though some of these had blooms on them, if I didn't like the shape of them, like now that I'm looking at it, I might take this one off too. You can clip the ones you don't like the shape of, or that are a little unseemly, or they're going in a weird direction. I also tore, you might have seen me, I tore up two that were actually rooting themselves into the ground down here. Which I don't want. It doesn't need to be, it's big and beautiful, and I'm happy with the size it is. It doesn't need to be any bigger. But it looks so much better. And the one thing I will say is when I do this initial prune in the spring, I'm really aiming at the bloom heads from last season. So I focus on that. I take anything that I see that's obviously dead. But usually what happens is when I'm walking the yard and just kind of giving everything a once over, that I will discover things I missed, because you're really kind of focused, and when you stare at something long enough, you start missing things. So it usually takes a couple times to get it exactly how I want it, but this initial prune is the bulk of it. So I know, look how pretty she is, and she's gonna be, oh, all these will just be huge. The bloom heads, they're dried, they're a little smaller, but they're almost like the Incrediballs from Proven Winners, is kind of what these look like. All right, friends, that's gonna do it for this video. Hopefully it was helpful and you enjoyed it. This is the time of year that things start getting a little nicer, and it's too early to put things in the ground, but we can definitely do some yard maintenance. So hopefully as you're getting ready to prune some bushes, you'll keep all of this information in mind. Comment below if you have any tips or tricks for me. If you saw anything that you think that would be helpful to me, I'd love to hear it. Otherwise, thanks for hanging out with me, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.